Hello from Annick, Northumberland. I'm standing outside of the old corn exchange. Now there's so much happening in the world, and in order to act, it's best, I think, if we could act out of our own deepest values in order to act with integrity. As Northumbria community, we already have something at the heart of who we are, which is our rule of life, which is quite simply availability to God, others, and ourselves, and vulnerability, intentional, deliberate vulnerability. Every year at Easter, companions of the Northumbria community are invited to review the rule of life because it's provocative, not prescriptive. It's urging us on in the way that we see Jesus living and asking us to live. But that's because every year, perhaps your context has changed, sometimes dramatically, so you need to think again. Well, now, for all of us, since this past Easter, our context has changed because things are changing on a global scale. So it is time, I believe, to review our rule of life, to think about what availability and vulnerability mean for us right now and how those values might spur us on for action. The first part of availability is to go to the cell of our own hearts, to seek God in that place, to come in humility, to come as much as we can with openness before the light of divine judgment, and to let God in love reveal to us what is there. When I was 10 years old, I was very achievement orientated and perfectionistic, and I remember very clearly failing a test and being very distraught and being wanting to hide that from my parents. Well, as it turns out, this was an eye test. And I was called back for a second eye test, devastated. I hid it, but then eventually I went. And indeed, I needed glasses, probably because I read under my covers at night with a flashlight, with a torch, instead of going to bed like I was supposed to. But anyway, I needed glasses, I got glasses. But in my 10-year-old self, I was much more concerned to be seen as being perfect and passing every test I ever took than having vision to see clearly and engage with the world with good eyes. And I think about that now and think, I resist the work of the cell. It is hard to go in there and be seen. It's hard to feel like you failed at something. And yet, isn't our desire to see clearly? Isn't our desire to have purity of heart? Isn't our desire to be right within ourselves and with God greater than this? It could be as well that we kind of come to a collective cell space, that we come as a group, as Northumbria community, other groups that we are in, to open ourselves again in humility for God's light to shine on us and say, how are you really? What's going on in there? What needs healing? What needs wholeness? Finally, I think in seeking God in the cell, we need to ask the question of, God, where are you? Where are you in the midst of all of this? I don't have the answer to that, but I know that's the question I'm asking, and I'm wondering where you are seeing God and seeking God in the midst of all that's happening. Do you see God in George Floyd as he takes his final breath? Do you see Christ gasping from the cross as he gasps for air and as the life drains out of him? Do you see God in the struggle? Do you see God in the response of people? Do you see God as absent and needing to be called into action to do something about what's happening? Where do you see God? This is part of the work of the cell. Secondly, having done the work in the cell to create a cleaner, healthier space inside of ourselves or within our groups, we turn toward hospitality, creating a friendly, empty space for others to come as their own authentic, made in the image of God's selves. So having opened ourselves to divine judgment, we resist the judgment of others. We resist seeing someone and assuming that because of the color of their skin or because of what gender they're presenting as or what their work is, that we know everything about them, that we know their story, when in fact they're a whole universe. And we have to be learners at the feet of them to discover who they are, who they show themselves to be, what their experiences of life are. And those kinds of encounters where we can truly allow the space for people to come as they are and for things to develop from there that you're not in control of, can be some of the most transformative encounters that we ever have. So it's scary because any real human encounter can change us. But again, it's part of our risky living to offer this space within ourselves and with others, in one-to-one interactions as well as in groups. The third aspect of availability is to follow the Spirit and engage in the work of prayer and intercession. So these are big battles that are being fought right now, and we need to make sure that we have a big perspective and we are prepared to pray big and powerful prayers, because our prayers are needed. And no matter how big the struggles are, it helps to be reminded that God is bigger still. And there is a whole heavenly host at work, and there is a power beyond us at work, but we can join with that power to enter the struggles. And we need to be equipped for that work. This is even part of, as the Northumbria community, we cross ourselves before we go into prayer. As a bodily reminder, we go with Christ, we go behind Christ when we engage in this work. We don't know what we will encounter when we engage in the spiritual fight, especially against old and deep systemic evils. However, this is why we remember that we are not alone. We go in together. We go in as best as we can, equipped in faith, and do this work, which I think is ours to do for such a time as this. If you want any help on any of these things, do let us know, because again, I think it's part of our vocation right now to be praying big and powerful prayers. The fourth aspect of availability is mission. Being who you are, where you are, doing the work that Christ has invited you to do and called you into. We follow the Spirit to act in our own places, out of our own authentic selves. In Celtic Daily Prayer, we have a wonderful prayer in the Hild Liturgy that says, Lord, show me the right seat, find me the fitting task, and give me the willing heart. Right seat, fitting task, willing heart. If we're going to engage with sustained transformative work over a lifetime, it's best if we do that from the place of our deepest vocation and to be joining in the work that Christ has invited us to do. So we're not asking, what's a good thing to do? What should I be doing? But actually, what's mine to do? And can I do it with all the love, integrity, and passion that I have within me? My brother-in-law is an award-winning investigative journalist, and his deep work is to furnish democracy with the facts on which change can be built. So the people of his city can't say, we didn't know, because he works and he takes his own pain of his own African-American black man experience and works it out of him through his fingertips, gets it from in here, gets the pain out to bring change in the world. And I think that's for all of us. If you are in pain, get it out your hands, but get it out your hands in the way that is yours to do in the world. Under intentional, deliberate vulnerability, we have our fifth aspect of the rule, which is teachability. There's so much for us to be learning right now. And again, if we're going to do it over a lifetime in a sustained way, in a deep way, I think we can all ask ourselves, what are we curious about? And follow that curiosity and let that develop. And also we can say, what is our own best way of learning? Do you learn through movement, through embodied things? Do you learn through learning about history, through books that you can hold in your hand? Do you learn best through podcast or hearing something? Do you learn through relationships? Start with and continue with and let that develop. But the ways that you learn, the things that you're curious about, because we need to be in these transformative changes for the long haul. Our sixth aspect of the rule is called the Heretical Imperative, which says we will and maybe we must pursue truth wherever we find it, even if it's not the conventional ways or the ways that we have found truth wooing us before. And also, having found truth, there is an imperative task for us to speak it, to act it, to let that truth change our lives and our actions. the heretical imperative. And the heretical bit is because within Christian circles anyway, the heretics are the people on the outside of what's acceptable and what's right. Well, this is the status quo, and this is what's been acceptable, but actually does truth say that that's still the case? And are we willing to risk our reputations or being put on the naughty list by asking awkward questions and by speaking out when it changes the atmosphere in the room and you get put on the dodgy list of friends, acceptable in the right circles or in your own social groups? What a time to be living the heretical imperative. So the seventh aspect of our rule of life is without walls and kingdom in the streets. So there's an opportunity for us to say again, God, help us to envision what your reign looks like, what your kingdom, your beloved community looks like here on earth, because we want to be engaging with that now. We want to be expanding our vision of how you see human life and society, and indeed all of life on this planet. In Hebrews 12 we hear, because we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us throw off the sin that so easily entangles and fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Friends, we are not alone in this. If we look around and say this isn't the world that we want to live in, and indeed it is not the world we want to pass on to our children and our children's children, we have inherited many destructive things and sin that easily entangles us. But we also have a goodly inheritance, and our ancestors and those who've gone before us in the good way, in the kingdom way, in the reign of God way are with us. Even in our own Celtic inheritance, we have Bridget. She was born to a Druid leader father and a Christian slave woman mother. St. Patrick, not from Ireland, a Briton who came to Ireland first because he was a slave. And being freed, he went home, and actually he felt called by God willingly to go back to the place where he had known slavery. St. Aidan of Holy Island used any funds that he got to redeem and free slaves. Now, we know that no human life can be bought or sold, and freedom isn't for the buying. Corn, that's an okay thing for human beings to buy and sell. People, not okay. So, imperfect though it was, Aidan was trying the best he could within his own times to bring freedom, and some of those people joined his monastery as well. Throughout the Bible, but especially in the book of Revelation, we see a vision of every tribe and every nation coming together. This is part of the richness of how God has made us to be, part of the rainbow, part of the beauty, this difference, and we need us all there. We need us all there to be whole. So can we envision, can we lift ourselves out of our walls, out of our church buildings, out of our different ways that we define ourselves, bringing who we are, but bringing ourselves to envision a bigger, more beautiful way to be with human life in community together. History is being made right now. We're not alone, and we're not without resources to know how to discern our own ways to act and respond to what's happening around us. We are not without hope. Some days it's hard to get out of bed, and once having gotten out of bed, it's hard to know what to do with ourselves. But I think we owe it to God in this world to keep with our values and keep as best as we can day after day to do the things that we are called to do and be the people we are called to be, and to live our way into a world that we are happy to share with those who are coming after us. Go well with hope and courage and God's grace, God's power into this day.